In the February PTR, New World's combat feels good different. So in my last video where I sort of summarised the PTR, I glossed over these combat changes because without actually feeling it in game, it was very hard to say what the outcome would be, but now I have actually had a chance to play the PTR. Before we jump in, if you could come over and follow me on Twitch, I've been streaming a lot and talking to you guys has been a lot of fun. There is obviously a link in the description. Now, one extra thing to note is that there is actually only one server for this PTR, and that's set in NA East. The reason that that is important is because I am from Europe, therefore when I actually try and play it, I'm naturally getting some lag. So the footage that I'm going to show you that's mine might be a little laggy because of that reason. So the first thing I personally wanted to check was this dodge cancel. So now when you're running and you basically perform a dodge, you no longer get stuttered at the end of your dodge, you basically just continue running. Well, you actually at the moment do a slide and then continue running. You no longer have to either sheath your weapon or swap weapons to make that happen. The Mad Lads have done it. Now I do actually have a couple of issues with that though. Firstly, the animation is sort of weird. As I said, you seemingly slide, especially if you're doing the light dodge, you slide at the end of it and the animation just like feels wrong, but the smoothness feels fine. It's just that you do a little bit extra slide. Now I don't know if that slide itself is a bug because it sort of looks like you're going a little bit too far with the light dodge, or if basically they just need to rework the animation. I'm not 100% sure. However, in the PTR it's a little bit ugly and I'm sure they'll fix it or do something with it. Now I do have a little bit of a conceptual problem with how dodging will be in PvP, because as a melee player, I feel like that the game is all about dodging. Basically, it's very, very hard to pin anybody down and have any kind of real combat. Everybody's always moving, and moving's fine, but everybody's dodging about and dodging out of the way, and it feels like it's just like an annoyance of dodging. Now, that's probably me being overreacting as a melee player who's not very good, but you know what I mean? I'm just a little bit worried that this will probably mean that there's going to be more dodging, and that melee may in turn actually become a little bit less fun. And I'm sort of hoping that they may have to realise now that they're giving pretty much all the classes a more easily escapable thing, that they then need to buff some of the melee, but we'll see. That doesn't seem to be happening with some of the changes. I'm not going to talk about all of the weapon balance changes here because quite frankly I don't know enough about all of the weapons, but there's definitely one change that is capturing the New World fans players' imagination, but probably in a negative way, and that is the change to the Gravwell. On the PTR at the minute it sort of seems nerfed or boosted depending on your point of view. For me it looks nerfed, right? So what's actually happening is that when you throw the Gravwell you can now walk out of it. You're no longer actually like rooted in place. But to make up for that, what it also does, it seems to pull you to the center of the Gravwell, and you know, in theory you can just be moved along, as somebody posted on Reddit, by getting chained in Gravwells. So I don't really know how to feel about that. I'll have to wait and see how if I can play it. When I was playing it on the PTR and I was throwing Gravwells, I was lagging, so it was really hard to actually like nail that. But I won't really be talking about weapon specific things. As I said, I don't really know too much about them. But overall the dodge is now pretty much like an automatic animation cancel, and I think that's a positive change. Along with that change to dodging, they've now also changed it when you can dodge and block. So in the live game you might get a little bit frustrated like I did, either you're doing the mutations or in PvP, where you essentially get animation locked by your own attacks. Like maybe you do 2 light attacks and you sort of have to wait a long time before you can dodge or block away from it, often meaning you get caught in CCs or you get caught in like an Expedition Mutator's mechanic. And even though I can see the mechanic, I can't react because my character literally won't do anything when I press the button because they're animation locked. Now they are making it basically before the midway point of an attack you can block or dodge. To get technical, it's actually if you do it before the first 2 frames of the active frame. Now the active frame basically is when the damage starts. What this means in that generally while you're winding up an attack you will still be able to dodge and block, but once it sort of starts doing to the point where you get to do the damage, then you can no longer like get out of that. The animation will proceed. And I have to say I do really like that change. I think my only worry is accidentally blocking or dodging when you didn't mean to, and you maybe do it before your attack is actually finished. However, that's a skill element, so can't really complain about that really. I do think that change is pretty much overwhelmingly great. For me, this is going to really enable them to add more mechanics to the game where you need to be more reactive, because as I said, at the moment you can sort of get like animation locked. This essentially eliminates some of that, and I think when it comes to PvP this is going to let the better players be better, which is bad news for me because I don't think I'm that great, but I think it's actually good for the game. Now there's an obvious bug with some weapons, but I'm not sure know exactly which weapons exactly, which is basically when you do this dodge backwards, when you're, you know, before you do the active frame, your backwards dodge seems to sort of like glitch out and you don't properly complete it. I'm sure and I hope that that will be fixed before we go live. Now, one thing I don't like, which is actually really hard to demonstrate because you'd have to see my hands and I really can't bother getting a second camera out, is that if you're attacking and it gets past the active frame and then you dodge, well, what happens is that the active frame continues and your animation continues and then you dodge, which can basically feel like about half a second where you press the button and then the action happens. And that for me feels a little bit weird. It's nice that they're chaining these events where they're like saying, okay, you've pressed the button, so you obviously want to do this, so we're going to do it at the next available time. But for me, it's leading like to too big of a gap between when you press the buttons. I would maybe have some sort of minimum gap or something like that. But overwhelmingly, I think being able to dodge and do stuff like this, like before and after attack very quickly, is a good thing. Oh, but we are not done yet. Weapon swapping is also changing, but now your weapons can be essentially swapped during, I think they said, reactions, dodging, consumables, and some other kind of like times. And it then doesn't interrupt those actions, so you can just sort of do it alongside. That feels good to me. And then because they've done that, they're making it so you can't just consistently like swap between weapons and there's going to have like a 1 second cooldown. That's fine, I understand that. Sort of removes the fun of where you keep swapping weapons just like when you're bored, but that's okay. The next one is that weapon swapping and attack animations can now be queued simultaneously, which is very similar to what I was talking about with the dodge, where that it actually sort of queues it up after you press the button, even if your character is doing something, except in this case what you're doing is you're swapping your weapon and then you're actively doing an action, so one of your abilities. This feels fine because you obviously press that button and the goal is to do that action as soon as possible, so I've got no qualms with any kind of delay there. I actually feel like just doing it as quickly as possible is better than just having to spam the buttons like over and over and over. So what this should mean is that you can now swap weapons, do an ability, and have it feel much smoother and better. Also, your weapon swapping is not going to get cancelled if you are staggered. Basically, if you get CC'd in the live version of the game, you might actually end up not swapping your weapons, so when you press the button and it didn't go through and you're left wondering, oh, what weapon did I actually have now? I've got to check because you got like stunned. Hopefully that will just mean that when you swap your weapons, you know what you're getting basically. All in all, I think I really like these changes. It initially seems like, and I hope it makes that the gameplay is now smoother, and in my limited experience I did think that it was an improvement. I'm hoping that this means that it's going to enable like smoother and maybe even more dynamic content both in PvE and PvP. If they can get these changes implemented without adding any other bugs, like we've already seen there's a bug with the dodge and stuff like that, then I feel like everybody will, maybe not everybody, I feel like most people will be happy with these changes. It's a little bit strange to have like these sort of like sizable changes to your combat 5 months after your game has come out. A lot of people are already familiar with what we've got, but I think they're doing them for the right reasons and I think most people will like them. For those of you who want to participate in the PTR, they're actually doing 2 scheduled OPR events, so I don't know if the developers or anybody's going to play, but they're saying like if you can play it these times, please do. I'll leave a little link to that, so if you want to join in, it'll show you your time zone and that kind of thing. So I think these are positive changes. If they just fix them in like all of the quirks and they remove them, then I think we'll be in for a really good future with the combat of New World. Come and follow me on Twitch, like this video, subscribe to the channel, have a most beautiful day, goodbye.